One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. Today is September 2nd, 2012. It is Sunday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. And today, for the first hour, I am joined by filmmaker and good personal friend of mine, Michael Murphy, the man behind, or one of the men behind, Why in the World Are They Spraying? And Mike's been on numerous times, and we've gone over geoengineering, the chemtrails, weather modification, some of the agenda. And tonight, I want to, because I've only got him for a limited time, I want to focus on more than just the geoengineering evidence. We're going to go over how the new movie, the release, how things are going, and we're going to push for some different types of activism. And we're also going to be joined later on by Morgan Carey, the manager for Skull, who did the pretty awesome reggae song at the end of Mike's movie, he did the reggae song and they used it at the end of the movie called Cry Die. And it's a really awesome song. And I think it's cool that there's these musicians coming out and tackling these subjects like geoengineering and chemtrails and using art forms like music to get it across to the general public. Because there's different ways to wake people up, and music is definitely one of them. So looking forward to that as well. So let's get right into it. Michael, welcome back to the show, brother.
Hey, great to be on, Popeye. You know, I was in the Midwest last time we spoke, and it was right before we released the film, so we've been pretty busy. We're lucky to have Skull. He's in town now. He had a song that was number 3 on the Billboard charts, so he has produced Cry Die, and has actually been along with me for some of the screenings that we've done, and he's opened up singing. So it's been a very good combination. We're waking up, so far, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. It will be millions within the next month or so, because numbers are growing pretty quickly. So, yeah, it's been great. Great to hear from you again.
Dude, I'm excited because when you uploaded Why to YouTube, it just went viral extremely fast. I mean, it's the last time I checked, it was close to like 200,000 hits. I'm sure by now it's over 200,000 hits.
Yeah, we had about, with all of the uploads, we had about 250,000 within about 10 days. And that's much quicker than What in the World Are They Spraying? And that first film was seen by, estimated to be over by 10 million people. So we're expecting this to have a considerable further reach than the first film. So we're excited. We're excited about what this will mean to the future of these programs, what it will mean to the future of activism, and how we deal with these issues. And bottom line is this: these programs will stop. The question does not remain in the hands of the people who are behind them. The question remains in us. Will we do what we have to do to get them stopped? And the answer to that question is yes.
And why is a very powerful tool. And I've said it before when Mike came on both times. The past 2 times he's come on, we talked about why specifically, went into a lot of stuff. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, you need to get a copy of this movie, have screenings, burn it, give out however many copies you can, pass the YouTube link around, show people this movie, because the movie itself, I mean, I've seen some flack, I've seen some on the version I uploaded for you to YouTube. I've seen a lot of comments and stuff on there, mostly good, some stupid, some very ignorant comments that they don't think that weather control is possible. To me, that person's just, those people are living in denial. I mean, there is no way around it. They are obviously doing something, and the new movie really is a slap in the face. What's the what is the reaction for you been like, Mike? Have you guys received any flack or positivity? What have you gotten?
Well, for the most part, it's been very positive, and again, millions of people will see this film. Hundreds of thousands have seen it within the first 2 weeks of the release. The film illustrates, that weather control is very real, that we've had this technology around for several decades. It was probably perfected right around Vietnam. It was actually used in the Vietnam War in Project Popeye. Needed to say that, but it's been perfected now, and geoengineering, without question, is related to these programs. I've spoken to a number of atmospheric scientists and meteorologists who stated that aerosols are required to modify our weather in conjunction with other technologies. So it's really irrefutable that this technology is available. So the response has been really fantastic. We implicate certain corporations like Monsanto, who benefits from these programs. There's no question now that we have a collapse of our natural systems. That includes our food supply. Geoengineers are very open about the fact. They state that if we start these programs, which they clearly have, they state that it could disrupt the food supply of over 2 billion people. What is happening this summer, what is happening in Africa and Asia, droughts in Africa and Asia are a stated consequence by geoengineers. So with that being said, we have certain corporations that are disaster capitalists, so they benefit greatly from these programs, which we discussed, I think, in the other interviews. So when you release that type of information and wake a population up to the damaging effects and how this affects each and every one of us, and if you look at just from the food prices alone, I live in Los Angeles in a very humble, lower income part of town, and I talk to a number of my neighbors who are just making it, just paying the bills and getting by with food. And now that food prices have risen a little bit, a number of them are having challenges making rent or having to cut back on certain things, or in some cases going homeless. So I've spoken to a lot of people. I hit my community. I hand out DVDs. As a result, my community is awakened by this. But through geoengineering programs and the orchestrated, without question, and engineered drought of this summer, it is going to drive food prices up, we believe, around 30% higher than what they are today. And that's going to mean all kinds of social implications, especially in neighborhoods such as the ones that I have been reaching out to and talking to, because when people have to make ends meet, they go into oftentimes certain illicit, activities in order to put food on the table. So that's going to create, in turn, a lot of social problems, including a lot of violence. Real quick, though, just before, it's important to note how this summer's drought conditions are engineered. We've had very few trails over Los Angeles, and I know you've had more in Florida, but in the LA area, we have not had any overland. So we've started looking at satellites. And from the equator all the way up to Alaska, there has been coverage of aerosols. You can see the trails, and there's very little sun hitting the Pacific Ocean. What that means is when the sun hits the ocean, we get normal evaporation. That evaporation causes water molecules to go into the sky. They eventually condense and fall as rain. When these particulates are put into the sky, there's literally a blanket over the Pacific. The sunshine is not hitting the ocean as it should be. Therefore, we're not getting as much evaporation. And the evaporation that does occur, geoengineers spoke, and we included this in Why in the World Are They Spraying, the fact that these particles act as cloud condensation nuclei. So instead of the rain condensing on other water molecules, they condense on this metal and they drift. They don't fall as rain.
Yeah, it stays like a river of moisture floating around in the upper atmosphere. And I'm going to touch on this again right on the other side of the break. I'm going to have Mike repeat that again because that's an important key piece of info. Ladies and gentlemen, stay right there. Don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Now, going into break, Mike was talking about the Pacific, and he was bringing up a point, and he got most of it out before the break came up, but I want to reiterate it again. Mike, you were saying that you noticed, and from all the research you did, you guys were looking at satellite imagery and stuff, and from the research that you put into this, it shows that, yeah, they weren't chemtrailing really over California, over the West Coast itself, the landmass. They went out over the Pacific and covered the Pacific so that the sunlight wouldn't evaporate the ocean water, creating clouds, which would then float because of the way the wind currents are. It would float over the West Coast and over the Midwest as rainstorms, feeding these crops this much-needed water so they can grow. And then on top of it, like you showed in the movie, they're spraying all this nuclei up in the upper atmosphere, and all the condensation, all the water is adhering to these particles, and it's literally a river of water just floating above our heads that's not dropping to where it's most needed.
That's correct. And geoengineers talk about a lot of implications of their programs. And again, we spoke about the possibility of affecting the food supply of over 2 billion people. Ozone depletion is a major problem with geoengineering programs. Anytime you put particulate into the sky, it will affect our ozone. So as a result, we now have a huge ozone hole over the northern hemisphere, and people notice now when we go out into the sun, including myself. I used to be able to stay out in the sun for 3 or 4 hours without burning. Now I'm burning within half an hour and 45 minutes. That is because our protective layer, the ozone, is literally being shredded every time they spray this material into our sky. So we have cases now of plant life and trees that their leaves are literally being burned, again, because that protective layer is being destroyed. But geoengineers talk about drought as being a consequence, and also disruption of weather patterns. So there's no question that our weather patterns are disrupted. We have droughts in certain areas, floods in other areas, which is a stated consequence of geoengineering programs. But if you look at mainstream science, what they're stating that the reason for these weather changes is climate change, and they're blaming it specifically on global warming. With global warming, for every degree that the planet heats up, we should expect 7% more precipitation. We do not have that. We have just the opposite. We have global drought, and if you look on the global drought monitor, we have most regions in the world in drought. So, again, there's no question the aerosols are in our sky. NOAA just did a report that illustrated that there were a significant amount more of stratospheric aerosols in the stratosphere. Again, the chemtrail programs are specifically called stratospheric aerosol geoengineering programs. In that study, they failed to speak about the composition of the aerosols. We know what they are. They're the primary ingredients of geoengineering programs. And they failed to source where those aerosols were coming from. We know they're from geoengineering programs. But anyways, so we have this coverage over the ocean. It's preventing the evaporation. And geoengineers talk about the aerosols acting as cloud condensation nuclei. So again, when they put this particulate and introduce it into the sky rather than the cloud formation of water, connecting with other water molecules, it connects with this metal particulate and drifts. And one of the main reasons why we have drought conditions here in the West Coast is because of this metal particulate. But eventually that water has to fall somewhere. So what we're seeing is, again, drought conditions here in California, but heavy flooding in the Midwest. But one thing I noticed, Popeye, and one thing that you may have noticed in Florida, I was in the Midwest for about 3 weeks this summer, and we did have a lot of aerosols. And when rain was in the forecast, I watched the clouds forming, and we were all waiting for rain because all of the crops are being disrupted in that area. And when the thunderheads would form, we'd see the planes over them, laying down the aerosols, literally creating a canopy above these storms. And within about a half an hour to 45 minutes, the storms would actually fall apart. They would flatten out, looking like smoke, and they would drift. No rain would fall, or occasionally we would get drizzle. And this, without question, is an orchestrated drought. We've covered in other interviews the monetary, the political agendas associated with this. Without question, there are certain individuals making billions of dollars this summer just from this drought.
Yeah, people like George Soros, who goes and buys up all the land that was ravaged by the floods last year. There are people that are, what really is scary, and I've said this on air multiple times, is the coming food problem that we're going to have because of this. People don't realize that if you have a really bad harvest during the spring and summertime, you aren't going to have food for the fall and the winter, and you're going to watch beef prices go up. I've actually cut down on the portions of food that I eat, specifically because I know that it's going to be rough. I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything, but I know that prices are going to be higher, so I'm trying to cut back on the amount of food I intake to a certain degree, so that way I could at least alleviate some of the costs that way. But I've also gone out and purchased foods, and not, I don't want to say like bulk, like I've gone with a pickup truck or something, but I buy a little extra every time I go and store up. Like I have extra beef, I have some extra chicken and stuff, and you just freeze it. Because if you don't store up on it now, in a few months the prices are going to be high. And from my personal experience, every time the prices go higher, they never ever drop back down. It doesn't matter even if there's a large abundance of the same thing, 4 or 5 months later. Once those prices get hiked, they never ever go down. So you better prepare because it's coming.
And just, the human health implications are unquantifiable. We have aluminum-related illnesses going through the roof. Alzheimer's has gone up 260%. In Riverside County, respiratory mortality went from number 8 down to number 3 in just a 6-year period. And this is just scratching the surface. But if we look at this, and we're talking about activism, and when we go out and hit the streets, there is nothing on the planet that these programs do not affect. And, oftentimes I go around the country and I speak to people. And a couple of years ago, this was a taboo topic. It was something that was effectively demonized by the corporate mainstream media as something that was lunacy. People who addressed this were crazy. People are starting to listen now, and I'll tell you why. We are seeing every consequence of geoengineering coming into fruition. So, we talk about going out and doing activism in the street. Hawaii was a great example. When I was there for a couple of months, we hit the streets several times, handing out free DVDs of the first film, What in the World Are They Spraying? And we did a number of screenings. We had Morgan Carey and Skull here, who are here with me right now. They came. Skull sang his chemtrail song, incredible song called Cry Die. But as a result of us reaching out to the community, handing out information that was credible, the area, that small island, is now awakened to the implications of geoengineering. We have now the Clean Sky Ordinance, which passed 3 out of the 4 stages necessary for this to become law, and it will effectively ban chemtrail geoengineering programs without 2 things: without an environmental impact statement and informed consent, which they will get neither of. But the reason I bring that up is there is every bit of this affects each and every person, and when we go out and when we talk to the public, everybody has an entry point where we have the ability to speak to. For instance, in my community, right now I'm talking about food prices. I'm asking people, what are you going to do if food prices go up 30%? And that's an entry point for me to bring up the issue of geoengineering. And I tell them how the trails in the sky relate to the rising food prices, relating to the death and destruction of corn prices, which again will affect literally everything. And as you said, Popeye, you were talking about beef, which everything is dependent on the food that we grow, through the death and destruction of these programs, which literally impact not only forests around the world, but our food supplies by sterilizing our soil and by with the drought.
Mike, I'm going to cut you off right there because we got a break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Activism. How do we wake people up? How do we show people that this is not some kooky, tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theory? And I'm doing air quotes when I say that because that's, that term conspiracy theory is used in a facetious way to, and given a negative tone like that to make people look at it and laugh. And I could get into that. That's a side issue. The point is, what do we do? You often hear us talk about what's going on, but you don't get a chance to quite hear many people offer solutions, because a lot of people will say, well, okay, so they're poisoning us. What the hell do we do? And like Mike said, yeah, what do? Hide under a rock? No, you don't hide under the rock. We make these people responsible for doing this to the planet and to everyone on it want to hide under a rock. That's what we do. We go after them. We expose them. And it's the only way. I think if everybody realized the danger of geoengineering, Mike, I think they would be, if everybody realized that tomorrow that this would stop.
Yeah, and we're at a vital time, because right now geoengineers are selling this to the public as something that they don't want to do due to the environmental impact and in the way that this will affect the rest of humanity. However, they're stating that if they don't do this, everybody might die from this threat of global warming. Geoengineering programs, because they while they do reflect sunlight, you'll notice when they spray, like in the afternoon, you'll have a warm day, and then the trails will come and the temperature will drop about 7 to 8 degrees. However, at night, they act as a blanket, they trap heat, and a number of studies actually indicate this, that geoengineering programs will exacerbate global warming by acting as a blanket. So that's, without question, these programs are about consolidating an enormous amount of both monetary and political power into the hands of the few at the expense of every living thing on the planet. But it's a real important time with the movement, because geoengineers now are calling for emergency geoengineering to start by next year, by 2013. So what they want to do is bring these illegal programs and make them legal. Now, they're actually calling for a central power of this. They're calling for a global government to regulate these programs, because they state, because these programs are so dangerous, whose hand would be on the thermostat? And being that these programs will impact some areas, some regions in a very negative way, they're talking about actually how do we regulate and how do we deal with this issue of equity? How do we compensate countries who have severe crop loss? I mean, these people are literally playing God. So, again, it's a vital time to reach out to the community, because geoengineers now are coming out in the mainstream. Bill Gates is funding these programs. We see science magazines now coming out as geoengineering being the savior to this issue of global warming. Bottom line is this: these programs exacerbate global warming. They're sourcing this methane release as being the reason that they want to start this emergency geoengineering. When the ice melts, it releases more methane. And again, every time they put the blanket over the Arctic, our nighttime highs are increasing, and thus more ice is melting. So it's literally a revolving cycle, but certain people are getting rich, extremely rich, not only through the death and destruction of our crops, but through the implementation of these programs. So it's something we have to jump on. We have to hit the streets with this message. Skulls in Town in Los Angeles today, our festival. So we're going to be going out. We're going to be handing out free DVDs of Why in the World Are They Spraying? So we encourage everybody who purchases a copy of the film to duplicate and hand out for free. whyintheworldnowtheyspraying.com is our website. You can get more information. But it's absolutely vital that we hit the public, that we get out into wherever we have influence and bring this message and get people knowing about it. And I often think, now millions of people are woken up to these programs, approximately 10 million. Think about what numbers we would have if everybody who is aware of this issue told one other person per week about this issue.
Let me ask you this. Do you have any objections to people airing it on public access TV or anything like that?
I encourage people to do this. Bottom line is this. We have to get this message out to everybody. We now have a very powerful tool. Why in the world are they spraying? You expressed your take on this, and you compared it to our first film, and if you want to share that with the audience, I think it would be great.
Well, the first film woke people up. It was, okay, what's going on? There's something in the air. What is it? You guys addressed the issue itself. Are chemtrails real? What's going on? Is geoengineering real? Is it happening? But the second film not only covers that again, but you guys really get into the why of it, the causality, which is really what people need to understand. Because I could say, yeah, they're spraying. Those are chemtrails. And then people always say, well, why would they do that? Well, how would they benefit? Who would benefit? And I think years ago, people didn't really know the particulars. And since that first movie came out, Mike, I know myself, that movie opened a lot of eyes, and a lot of good researchers went and started to look into this chemtrail geoengineering phenomena, and they found out that it wasn't just some random thing going on, and that this was part of something larger, and that people weren't wearing tinfoil hats. And just that first movie alone woke people up and caused research, which inevitably led to the second movie being made, which answers the question of why are they doing it?
And when we finished the first film, we said, wow, what a great job this is going to impact. We hope several thousand people. Well, it ended up impacting several million people. The feedback that we've been getting is that this next film will really take this to the next level. And the professional quality, I was fortunate enough to team up with Barry Kulski. He was the editor who brought the professional touch. I was an amateur at best, coming into this, and the rest of my team was very much at the amateur level. It was until when we brought Barry Kulski on, who co-produced Why in the World Are They Spraying, that we were able to bring a professional quality up for the first film. But because of this, because we teamed up, this film has been rated not only content, but both quality is much better than the first film. So we have a tool now to use in our activism. I am an activist at heart, never wanted to be a filmmaker, never wanted anything to do with the business. However, I do have one goal in mind, and that's to stop these programs. So filmmaking is a very effective tool for doing that. And in Maui, we handed out thousands of DVDs on that island. As a result, we have critical mass. And when you get critical mass in an area, that's when you can go to your local officials and have them address this. And that, gives it a lot of credibility. But if we have ordinances, which we have the ability to do within the next year, that we can have passed in counties across America and across the world, we can actually make a huge legal issue out of this geoengineering, and we can move much closer to getting these programs stopped. So it's a very, very effective tool. The issue is getting out into the public, and a lot of times people ask me, what can I do? And they want specific directions on what to do. And I usually encourage people to really look inside, look in your heart. And Popeye, the reason for that is we are incredibly powerful human beings when we come from the place of power. And the place of power always comes from our heart. And what I mean by that is every person has a unique special gift that we've been given. And when we move in that gift, that is when we have power. And we see Skull, who's used to singing, who has impacted millions of people in Korea, and he's going to be impacting millions of people here in the U.S. because his gift is singing. However, if I go and start singing about this, we will, Morgan's laughing in the background, we're going to go in reverse. We're going to have people running from this issue. And that's why it's so important that we find our place of power, because we've been trained, through the school system, we've been trained through the corporate system to take directives from somebody else and essentially fulfill their agenda. Well, for this time, we all individually have an agenda due to the fact that these programs affect each and every one of us in such a negative way. So I really ask that people look to us, use some of the ideas that we have, but use whatever gift and skills you have. And some people are computer people; they do incredible artwork, and I've seen incredible things on Facebook. If that is your gift, use that gift to get this message out. However, if speaking at public events such as town hall meetings, is a place where you feel comfortable, bring the DVD there, bring flyers, and get out into the public. Bottom line is this: while millions of people are waking up, 10 million people saw the first film. If you think about the percentage, Popeye, it's a very small percentage of America. We have over 300 million people here in America, so we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, it is a small percentage, but I'm sure that the second movie will reach, just by judging what the first movie reached, I'm sure it'll reach at least 10 times that amount, if not more, because people are waking up worldwide. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the final segment of the first hour and the final segment with my guest for this afternoon. Actually, I should say guests, because I will bringing on my second guest in a moment. But I want to give Mike his final thoughts on everything. So, Mike, you have the floor. Go right ahead.
Well, final thoughts is this. Bottom line, other than complete nuclear fallout, there has been no greater threat to our planet. We're looking at natural life as we know it ending on this planet unless we do something about geoengineering. So while that gives us great responsibility, it also gives us a wonderful opportunity because we've had cycles, human cycles, and cycles of control that have been going on for a very long time. These programs are a way to completely end the game, meaning it will consolidate an enormous amount of, again, monetary and political power into the hands of a few at the expense of everything. And what they're looking to do is transform this planet into a way that suits their needs for godlike power. And we, again, have the ability to stand up collectively and say no to these programs. So at the end of the film, we end, why in the world are they spraying? And we answer that question because we allow it, and that is very true. And again, we are very powerful beings as human beings on this planet. We are stewards of this earth, and when we stand up and when we collectively say, no, we will not allow you to do this, that is when these programs will end. So there's no question in my mind that these programs will end. The only question is, when will everybody join us? And I think that the answer to that question is very soon, because we have people waking up around the world. We have people, again, who are utilizing their skills. One is with me today, Skull, and then my good friend Morgan Carey, who is a producer, a music producer here and a manager of Skull here in Los Angeles. So I'd like to, Popeye, pass over the phone, because he's done a wonderful job at getting people here in Hollywood involved through his connections and his ability to bring this message to pop culture. Can I hand the phone to him?
Oh, please, by all means.
All right, brother. Hey, thanks, and this is Morgan.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for coming on again, brother.
Hi, Popeye. Great to meet you.
Hi, Morgan. It's great to meet you. Let's really quick, in about 30 seconds, just introduce yourself to the listeners, and then because it's kind of important that people get an understanding of who you are, so they can understand how powerful a message it would be to come from you to other people in the the music industry or the entertainment industry, especially out in LA. What's going on with geoengineering and chemtrails? Because if we could get some of these people that they use music and art to talk about things that they care about, if we could get them to focus on geoengineering, I think we have a better chance of waking up more people as to what's really going on. What say you?
Absolutely. I would say that, our primary goal has been to penetrate pop culture with this message, because typically, as I heard you mention to Michael, whenever the powers that be, whenever there is an issue, a dire issue, like, for example, chemtrails or the proliferation of nuclear power or, any of these issues, the first thing the power structure does is paint it with that conspiracy theory paintbrush. And we have been programmed to respond like Pavlovian dogs by just, I don't want to be, I don't want to be thought of as that guy with the aluminum foil hat. And so we close our minds off to things that we should be opening our minds up to. And so this is why I felt that it was so critically important that we penetrate pop culture and use music and celebrity as a vehicle for doing that. I've worked in the past, obviously my baby sister is Mariah Carey, and back in the day I was walking her around, introducing her to people like Seymour Stein, who started Madonna, or Nona Hendrix, Billy Idol, to try to get her to launch her career, and subsequently had the first act signed to Michael Jackson's MJJ level, MJJ, his record label. And my life now, I'm much more focused on permaculture, and the only reason I'm back here and doing any work in the music industry is because of my love for Mother Earth and my great admiration for Skull's musical acumen.
What woke you up to like the geoengineering and the chemtrail phenomenon? Did you just look up one day and say, that doesn't look right?
It was probably about 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, that I started growing my own food because I was very concerned about the degradation of our food supply. So I wanted to grow all my family's food. And I'd be out working in my gardens, and my gardens are, built with sustainably harvested woods, and there's only organic soil and drip irrigation and sealed with hemp oil, and we're trying to keep everything on a very integrous tip. And then to look up in the sky, and I'd see these trails overhead, and I didn't know what it was, and I had different friends, and my one friend in particular was Rastafarian, and he would tell me these stories about chemtrails and geoengineering, and my knee-jerk response was, oh, it's conspiracy theory, and I just negated it out of hand. But over time, I started getting curious. So I first watched Cliff Carnicom's movie, and Aerosol Wars, I believe it's called, and had a lot of difficulty getting my way through it because it's a little slow. But 5 or 6 viewings later, I made it through the whole thing, and then I got curious. And I found Mauro at geoengineeringwatch.org. We started communicating. I went out to that first conference, that Geoengineers conference, and I hired a street team, a team of marketers that typically I would work with if I was promoting a record. And I had them lace the convention center where they were doing this convention with biohazard tape. And that lent impetus to the idea of using the biohazard tape several years later in Skull's video Cry Die, which I would encourage everybody to go to YouTube, search Skull Cry Die. Please, we need all the support we can get. If you have that financial flexibility, please download the song on iTunes, because we need to penetrate pop culture with this message. Just like you have to go to Why in the World Are They Spraying? Order the DVD. View it on YouTube. We have to go viral with this message, and it's critical. It's critical for our survival.
I agree, because this affects everyone. I mean, it doesn't matter where you live on the planet. It doesn't matter what color you are, what God you believe in. All of that is a moot point when there is a group of individuals poisoning the very air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. It affects all of us. It doesn't matter. All of our man-made, created separations that we actually enforce, that are constructed to keep us separated, all those disappear when you realize the basic needs, food, drink, and air, are all being contaminated.
Absolutely, and we are having this conversation on a daily basis about the importance of rallying behind and coalescing around a singular message, which is we as a species need to survive. So there are, you have for example, Institute for Responsible Technology, and they're very focused on this blight, the geoengineering blight, and then, we have, Mike Murphy and this great anti-geoengineering movement, and it's like we have to thrive and occupy, and we have to all come together and recognize that, together we are so powerful. And the forces that be have for so very long worked to divide us, to keep us separate. And we have to constantly remind ourselves and each other that together we are so very strong. And we cannot let them divide us using the conspiracy theory paintbrush, pitting the right against the left. Look, at the end of the day, we all want to be able to have a fruitful existence, provide for our children, and most importantly, that our children will be able to enjoy at the very least the same comforts, the same gifts that we experienced and were blessed with. It's just not okay that they are robbing our children of these blessings.
Oh, I hear you. Like I was telling Mike during one of the breaks, I was talking to my 2-year-old niece yesterday on Skype, and I got to see her, and I was looking at her, and if I don't do something to actively engage these criminals and call them out and expose what they're doing, she doesn't have a chance to even live to be 80 years old and live a fruitful life and have kids of her own or grandchildren. And what kind of planet and world and life would I be leaving her, and legacy would I be leaving behind for her if I didn't stand up? I don't have kids of my own, but I have nephews, and I have a beautiful 2-year-old little niece, and when I see her, I realize that it hits home. It really does, Morgan. It hits home and lets me know that is my responsibility to stand up and speak out. And I think you coming up and speaking out, man, is just powerful because of I don't like to say because of fame or whatever, but because of people that can help make a difference. There are people out there that if they're they have a spotlight on them, and I think it's imperative that because they have a certain spotlight on them, if they know about this, they have to stand up. I mean, I give you a lot of credit because it takes a lot of balls to be in the entertainment industry and stand up and talk about any of this stuff. I appreciate you and Mike both coming on the program. I got to cut us off because the break is coming up, but it has been an honor talking to both of you gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, why in the world are they spraying.com? Skull, Cry, Die. I'll be playing the music when we come back in second hour. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Thanks so much, Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. It is September 2nd, 2012. And first hour, you heard me talking to Mike Murphy and Morgan Carey about geoengineering. And I was talking to Morgan right up until about a minute ago before we came back on. He's actually really awake and really smart guy. So he's agreed to come back sometime in the future. Him and Skull are going to come back on by themselves for an hour, and we're just going to get into their heads. So that'll be interesting. And I wanted to play just a little bit of Skull's song here. I'm only going to play about a minute of it because I got a bunch of other things to get into, but I do want you guys just to hear a little bit of the song. Now I'm going to play the YouTube video of it because I like in the beginning there's this guy, he's got his daughter, and the little girl reminds me of my niece, and the father points up to the sky and he says, "Oh, look at those clouds," and she goes, "Those aren't clouds, Daddy, those are chemtrails." I just think it's interesting how the little one, the youth, is educating the older generations.
Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile. Me look up in the sky and me can't see clear. Blue skies are good and white. Lines appear, them say you
It's actually a really good video, and I urge you to go watch the entire video on YouTube and back skull up, download the song from iTunes if you can. What is it, like 89 cents or 99 cents or whatever for the song? I mean, come on. People will pay that to listen to mindless, brainless crap on, from these mainstream artists that don't go out there and put themselves out and at least talk about this stuff. The artists that make it, they make it because they don't talk about this or talk about real stuff. They talk about what they're told to talk about or sing about. So we need to help push these people into the mainstream. It's been done in the past, and we can do it again. And I think it's pretty neat that he's Korean. He's very well known over in Korea, and now he's kind of coming over here. And that means that at least there are people somewhat awake in the other parts of the world as to what's going on. It gives you hope. Just shows you that you're not isolated when you I shouldn't say beliefs, because beliefs really have nothing to do with this. It's just a fact that this is going on. So when you know what's going on, sometimes you feel like you're isolated and all by yourself because, oh my God, I must be the only intelligent person that doesn't think that this stuff is tinfoil hattery. No, there's other people out there. You're made to feel alone. And I think seeing artists and people from all around the world talking about the same things that we're talking about, and saying the same things. This is dangerous. This is death. That's a good thing. Like Morgan, having him be awake, that's a good thing because he can, put that out to people that are in the entertainment industry. And I know that not everybody in the entertainment industry is going to stand up. They're not superheroes. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that, I don't think I know, using the mechanisms of control to reverse this is one of the ways that we're going to fix the problems. It's like I tell people, people have said to me, how did you deprogram? One of the ways that I deprogrammed was myself. Was and I still do this when I want to research a subject. I'll download podcasts, information as much as I can, and instead of listening to mainstream crap, even if it was just to dissect it, instead of listening to any of that, because even subconsciously you don't realize that you're still being, ideas and things are being put in your head. Even if you're awake, you're still downloading that information. And it'd be like downloading garbage and just filling up your files with, filling up your hard drive with crap. So instead I listen to stuff from like Mark Passio or Jan Irvin or other people. I think a little. My brain kind of operates on hyper mode, so I have to take on like 2 or 3 projects at once to keep it busy. But so I'll jump from looking at the trivium to maybe reading a book like Joseph Farrell's work right now on Nazi super secret technology that was going on, that the SS was working on, the A-bomb stuff, and that dovetailed with my interview with Robert Wilcox. Again, see how it all goes around and around and around. Anyway, I got a little off track there. My apologies. The point is, you need to deprogram yourself however you can, your own little way. Myself, again, I read, I listen to podcasts and stuff, and if I listen to music, I try not to listen to too much mainstream garbage. I try to listen to alternative stuff. I try to listen to stuff maybe I've never heard before. I try to expose myself to as many new things as possible because I understand at least at a base level as what's going on, and I can now at least disseminate garbage from non-garbage. Okay? And I find that if you open yourselves up to stuff that's not mainstream, you find more and more truth. You find more and more things that you didn't know about. How many people would have known about Immortal Technique or his message? And look how powerful he is. He brings 9/11 truth and stuff to the hip-hop community. I was introduced to him years ago, almost 10 years ago. This is before he was embraced by the quote-unquote truth movement or freedom movement or anybody. Now he wasn't as well known back then. And one of my friends said to me, hey, you should check this out. And I listened to his music and I was blown away. It was one of his first or second album or something. And I was just blown away. It was, or maybe it was revolutionary. Was it revolutionary music or something like that? Anyway, it was he was railing against the Bush administration, just talking about certain things that I knew to be fact, and I was like, wow. You don't ever hear people talk about this, and at the time, I was going through my own awakening, and it really blew me away. It blew me away that there was music out there, there was stuff out there with substance to it. So it is out there, but we have to support it as well. And it's circular, because if we support it and we help these people, who knows who they could be in touch with or wake up, and then the person that they wake up could be the person that wakes up 50,000 or 100,000 new people, and then those 100,000 people go wake up one or two people themselves, and it exponentially just grows and grows and grows. That's how we're going to evolve. Okay, we all have to work together, and I'm not talking about being communistic or socialistic or any of that crap. I'm not talking about a government model. I'm talking about, as humanity, we just need to work together. Morgan stated it. Mike stated it. When they spray, when they're spraying and they're screwing with the weather, this stuff is affecting us on a global level. They're spraying out over the Pacific Ocean, and yet it's affecting the middle, the Midwest of the country, and where most of the food is grown, where most of the cattle is, and it's going to affect food prices, beef prices. What about fuel prices? Because now they use corn for oil and stuff, and for ethanol and all this other stuff. Alternative fuels, whatever. That's going to go up. And that already causes corn shortages. So this affects everybody. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, red, purple with polka dots. It doesn't matter if you believe in Jesus, Muhammad, King Solomon. It doesn't matter who you believe in. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It just doesn't matter. Okay, the necessities, the basics are food, water, and air, and all three are being effed with. So we are all being affected. So it's time to pay attention. All right, we're going to break. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Getting involved is how we're going to stop this. So, I urge people, do screenings, do whatever. Go out, hand out copies of the film. If you do more than just email links to the YouTube version of the film, why in the world are they spraying? That helps. But if you send out 100 emails, how many people are actually going to click the link and watch the full-length movie? Because, and I'm not saying it's because the movie is too long, but how many people are actually, let me put it this way, how many times have you sent out emails, oh my God this, or oh my God that, right? How many people after a while just, they want to tune out because it's too much? So maybe try to approach it from a different angle. Have throw a party or something, and whatever theme party, whatever the hell you want to call it, video screening, whatever, and play the movie. If you guys want to have Mike Murphy on, at a screening, if you guys can bring him out, say somebody, when I say you guys, I mean the listeners, say somebody wants to get a screening together with a couple hundred people or something and do a question and answer session, contact them. Why in the world are they spraying.com? Get a copy of the film, support them, and they urge you to make copies of it. There's no copyright or anything on it, so you can just burn it for free and put it all over the place. But if you can, contact them and have them come down and do a question and answer session. I mean, Mike's a smart guy, and he's knowledgeable. He knows what's going on, and he can get into detail. He can explain a little bit more, in person about why they would do this to the food, why they would want to, and maybe you can even, if it's possible, because I know that they're going to be on the East Coast coming up, I think, towards the end of the month. Maybe they could even get Skull and Morgan to come on, because I think it's important. The more people see that there's people from all different ends and angles agreeing that this is going on and that this is really detrimental to not only our health, but the health of the planet and the food supply and everything else. I can't reiterate that enough. Air, food, and water. The three basic necessities, and all three of them are being destroyed so that a small group of individuals can have godlike power, because that's what this is about. This goes to show you how insane these people are, that they want to have godlike power. I mean, these geoengineers, you see them in the movie, they just don't care. They could literally care less about the fact that they're poisoning the planet. It's pretty disturbing when you see it and you watch it. It really is. It really disturbing is not even the way to put it. I want to play a clip really quick. This is off the subject. I want to shift gears because I have a few things I want to get into, but I want to play this clip pretty much in its entirety. And I don't really care for Tom Hartman too much. I think he buys too much into the left-right paradigm, and he plays the left-right against each other too much, and he's constantly anti-gun and everything else, and he does put out the establishment message, at least from the neoliberal side of things anyway, pushing that left-right paradigm again. But in this case, he's got an ex-law enforcement officer on, and they're talking about the war on drugs, and I think what they were talking about is pretty spot on. And again, this ties into everything that we've talked about, the police state. Why are they going after people for a little a plant, a green plant that grows out of the earth, and yet they don't go after the big pharma companies, or they don't go after the these geoengineering companies. They don't go after Monsanto. They don't go after what about Evergreen or any of these companies? Whoever's dumping, whatever agency, whoever is dumping this crap into the sky. You don't see them getting put in jail. They're literally poisoning the earth and committing genocide, killing millions of people. Like Mike said, you see the respiratory disease rate in the West Coast going up. Within 6 years, it dropped to number 3, the number 3 killer out there. Why is that? Oh, it's just the smog. But what's helped creating that smog? California doesn't make any sense. They have cleaner emission standards than elsewhere in the country. So maybe there's something else. Maybe there is stuff being sprayed. Maybe perhaps there really is a radiation problem coming over from Fukushima. These are things people need to pay attention. And instead, you have people getting arrested instead of the people that are behind these things, making spider goats, things like that. No, instead they're arresting people that smoke a plant because they're sick. And I don't want to hear any more of this garbage people arguing with me, oh, that medical marijuana stuff is just an excuse. Those people, they're all losers. No. Okay? Yeah, some people did go and abuse the system. I've spoken to people that ran dispensaries, and they said, I said, well, what happened, blah, blah, blah. And one person told me, they said, well, kind of pisses somebody off when the neighbors in the neighborhood, if the dispensary's in the neighborhood and you get some 18-year-old kid goes in, buys, an ounce of marijuana and then goes out to his car, rolls up a joint and sits there in the car smoking it, getting high right in front of their house, parked out at the curb. Yeah, that tends to piss people off. Now, do people need to stop being so uptight? Yeah, I guess. But at the same token, would you want 4 or 5 cars with kids all getting high in front of your house where you're raising your children? And I'm not saying that. Ooh, are you pushing that marijuana's bad? No. What I'm saying is, there's places to do things. Why do you need to sit and smoke in your car? Oh, because I can, man. It's my freedom. But do you really have to be an ass about it? I mean, if people aren't coming at you and busting balls, why not just take it and go home or go wherever and do it? Why do you have to drive around and do it? Why? To prove a point? I mean, why push? Because that is one of the things that is leading the people in the cities to go to the government and say, we want them out. That's why there's this backing by the local residents to get rid of a lot of these dispensaries, regardless of whether or not there are sick people out there. That's why there's this push. Because people, all you need is the bad apples, the people that they don't care, they're just going to do what they want. And instead of using some common sense and saying, look, right now this is still kind of a touchy subject, why don't we do this the right way? And no, there's always going to be somebody. I used to be that guy. Trust me. Put your feet up and I'm going to be the rebel. And in this case, it's people, I'm going to smoke a joint in my car because I can. Because if a cop comes over, I'll just flash him my ID card that says medical marijuana ID and tell him to kick rocks. But, I mean, do you have to do that? Do you have to be that, F you? Yeah, I know that the war on drugs has been that way to you, but going back at them with that attitude is not going to help. It's adversarial, and it brings you down to their level, and at the end of the day, it causes you issues, doesn't it? Because now, again, you have people going out and just without using a little bit of common sense. I'm not saying that's the case in every, all cases, but that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of these locals are pissed off at the dispensaries, because not really because of the dispensary itself, but because some of the, the clientele that goes there, it gets abused, and then the people, usually the ones that are abusing the system are the ones that are, trying to be the quote unquote rebel. So what happens? Because no one else is taking care of business, no one else is regulating it, the people in that area are going to go to the government, because that's what they've been taught to do, is you must go to your government to solve your problems. And what does the government do? Come on in. Come on in. Come on, DEA. Come on in, federal government. Arrest and these people and close down these dispensaries. So you have people getting arrested, the dispensary owners and stuff, for complying with state law. But it's against federal law. But now the state steps aside and the city steps aside and lets them get arrested and hassled. See how it all works? All right, we're going to break. When we come back, I'm going to play this clip from Tom Hartman. We'll be right back. All right, here's a clip that from Tom Hartman's show the other day. And as I said, I don't agree with most things he says, because he plays into the whole liberal left-right paradigm and tries to keep people trapped in that. And attacks quote-unquote conspiracy theorists. But his piece here on the drug war is pretty spot on. And wait till you hear the numbers on incarceration and the amount of money and things. Just check this out.
But instead, the United States seems to be spending all of its money on incarceration instead of education. According to a recent Pew Research Center report, between 1987 and 2007, nationwide spending on prisons increased 127%. But nationwide spending on higher education only went up 21%. The state of Pennsylvania, for example, prison spending is double education spending. Thanks to the failed war on drugs, in the last 30 years, the incarceration rate in America has jumped from 220 people out of every 100,000 to 743 out of every 100,000. That equates to 2 million more prisoners in America, a quarter of whom are nonviolent drug offenders. And for the first time in history, both prison spending and student loan debt have each topped $1 trillion. We haven't heard anything about the failed drug war yet at the RNC, and frankly, I doubt we will. But isn't it time we end it and divert that money wasted on it to sending more young Americans to college? Mark Harrell joins me now. He's an attorney, libertarian commentator, and author of the book Observations of White Noise, an acid test for the First Amendment. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us.
Thanks.
Usually you and I are fighting about some topic, but I am guessing that this, at least the notion of rolling back the drug war, is something with which you would agree.
Oh, absolutely. The drug war has been out of control. We look at the numbers, and I think in 1980, 10% were drug abusers, drug users, people who possess drugs, about 10% of the overall prison population. Now it's more like 25%. And what changed, of course, was just say no. Anytime a government goes to war against its people, and you declare a war on drugs, a war on whatever, you're going to have problems. Marijuana is one of the biggest problems. People shouldn't be in jail for possessing marijuana. I don't think people should be in jail for using marijuana. It needs to be classified differently. It's in there with ecstasy and heroin. They need to decriminalize marijuana. They need to change the 1970 Controlled Substances Act. And they need to take a lot of steps. We have too many people in prison. We've basically declared war on people. And people in this country, we've criminalized a lot of things that shouldn't be criminalized. And because we have so many laws, people break them. And then, as we've talked about, because of ALEC, because of the big business of private prisons, and we've talked about this, I'm usually for privatization, but not for the military, not for prisons, because I have a law enforcement background. When you really look at this, there is big money in truth in sentencing laws. There is big money in a lot, 3 strikes laws. They fill up the beds, and there's big money in filling those beds for private prisons.
Yeah, and that's that line between the commons, the stuff that we all collectively should be doing, and outside the commons where the private enterprise operates. You would think that in the 30s, when we experienced prohibition, and, John Dillinger and all that stuff, and then we ended Prohibition, that we would have learned a lesson out of that. What do you think are the forces that have maintained this war on drugs all these years? Why is this so persistent?
Well, the big one is the emergence of the private prison industry. There's a lot of different things. I think there's social conservatives, certain social conservatives, many of whom are Republicans, will tell you they're for small government, are for big government in law enforcement. Right. They believe that, and I think that there's a morality play. I think people actually think somehow it's a drug, and I think it can be harmful. But whether it's good or bad, it's a drug. We all use drugs. I've used caffeine all day long. Every one of us here is probably on a drug. Yeah. Some of the drugs are probably worse than marijuana. But the bottom line here is it's gotten into a thing where we've gotten lockstep, that the law passed, we have these 5 controlled substance schedules, we've gotten locked into this, and the money that follows. The other reason is, we can debate about whether there should be federal grants for law enforcement. But if there are federal grants for law enforcement agencies will follow the money. And where a lot of the money is in drug enforcement. If we reprioritize and the federal grants to local and state law enforcement were to do other things, like combat child sex predators, they would redistribute their allocation to get that money. Yeah. So it's systemic, and it's gotten so ingrained. What amazes me is, just like you said, Prohibition, we didn't learn our lesson. We went as far as amending our Constitution, and we could change that with the 21st Amendment. But here we've got statutes like the 1970 Controlled Substances Act. Almost everyone agrees the drug war is not working, but we can't get these laws off the books. It's not even an amendment. It's just a law. We should repeal it.
It's crazy. And the fact that we're spending like Pennsylvania, for example, spending twice as much on prisons as schools says something very bad about our priorities, doesn't it?
Well, it says a lot about our priorities. Absolutely. It says a lot about our priorities. We continue to incarcerate people. And, of course, the incarceration of people affects. It's all tied in together about quality of life. But, on this one, we do agree. This war on drugs, anytime the government declares war on the people, it never works. And the fallout's always large.
Mark Harold, thanks for dropping by.
Sure.
Great to see you.
You see, and that's why I said it was a good clip, because these guys made a good point, and I'll give Tom Hartman credit. He actually let the libertarian speak his piece on this, and the guy that came on, I can't remember his name, but you heard it, and he was right on point. I mean, the war on drugs is ridiculous. Prohibition didn't work with alcohol. What makes us think it's going to work with drugs? Period. End of story. But we already know this. The problem is there are certain groups that make more money off of the drugs being illegal, that being the CIA. You see, that's why there's this huge push for not decriminalizing. I'm not for legalizing anything, because why make it legal? It should never have been illegal or criminalized to begin with. So cannabis should not be made legal, just decriminalize it altogether so people can just grow it and do whatever they want. Oh my God, there would be anarchy. No, there wouldn't. You see, you're assuming when you say that. That's an assumption based off of some very bad info given to you by people that want to control you. So they tell you that, oh my God, if black people smoke pot, they're going to go out and rape white women. Black guys are going to be running around and raping white women. Go watch Reefer Madness if you don't know what I'm talking about. And Mexicans, too. I think it was Mexicans and black people. They said black guys and Mexican guys were going to go out and rape everybody because they smoked pot. I mean, that's the ignorance. They had to get this, they had to get into your head. They had to get you to hate something natural. And instead of using common sense, they had to use some form of fear to get into your head and to get into people's heads back then to foment this disbelief, or this distrust and disbelief that cannabis is good. And they used fear. They told, the average white person that, oh my God, they played on their racist beliefs. It doesn't matter if things have changed now or not. Back then, the way they got their foot in the door was they played on people's racist beliefs, and they said, oh my God, Mexicans and blacks are going to come out and rape everybody and cause mayhem and kill people if they smoke pot. We got to ban this stuff. It's a scourge. And who funded all this stuff? Go look at who funded this. You'd be surprised. This is all done for a reason, okay? Do I think that you should be able to just go to the corner and buy cocaine? I don't think coke or heroin or any of that is good for you. But part of the problem with it making so much money is because it's illegal. It's like telling a kid, don't put your hand in the cookie jar. Well, what happens when you leave the kitchen? The kid goes right to the cookie jar. They know that. You think that the social engineers don't understand that? They do. That's why there's certain, you'll see certain programs. DARE, Drug Abuse Resistance Education. Did that really teach kids anything about not doing drugs? No. Actually, that exposed more kids to drugs. I didn't know half the things I knew about drugs until DARE came into play. DARE came in when I was probably, I was in middle school still, back in the 80s when DARE first started. And I remember, I think I was, let's say like 7th grade, I think. Yeah, 7th grade or 8th grade. And they came to the class, maybe, I think it was like 7th grade. And they came and they brought us to the auditorium. And they had this board with all these little baggies in it with all different types of illicit drugs. And of course, I'm doing air quotes, illicit drugs, right? And I had never seen crack or cocaine or marijuana. I'd never seen any of this stuff. Never was I exposed to this. Maybe in a movie, maybe if I saw Scarface or something, but I had never seen it for real in person. I'd seen it faked, but I'd never seen it in reality. And the DARE officer came to school, and everything changed. And you'd be surprised how many kids in my generation, my class, did drugs and were doing drugs by the time we were seniors in high school. You'd be surprised. Kids used to do coke in the bathrooms. Hey, but no, DARE had nothing to do with that. No. We're going to break. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the final segment of today's Sunday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. As always, I want to give you all listening a big shout out and a big thank you for taking 2 hours out of your day to tune in and listen to me and whoever I have on as a guest and listen to my rants and anything else. Again, if you weren't listening, I would be speaking to the wall. If you guys weren't pulling the archives or listening to the YouTube archive or however you listen, again, I'd be speaking to the wall. So I'm honored and humbled that you come and you choose to take 2 hours out of your day to hang out with me, and I do appreciate it. Thank you, and I love all of you. Now, I want to go over the RNC really quick. Not really the RNC itself, but, well, somewhat of the RNC, and cover something really quick, because I talked about this with Danny Panzella and Tracy Diaz on a Friday off air a little bit, and there's a lot of people that are disenfranchised between the Ron Paul campaign and the shenanigans with Jesse Benton and that stuff, and then the stuff that the GOP and the RNC and the Romney campaign did to screw over the Paul campaign. So there's a lot of people from a liberty-minded aspect that are just right now walking around kind of disenfranchised. And I think it's important that those people don't just, feel, kicked in the gut and left to float away, because that's what the powers that shouldn't be want. They want people to be disenfranchised and feel defeated, and I think that's not the way to look at this. I think people need to come together, and they need to realize that, this should be an example of why we should not look to political parties or political figureheads or supermen or, some sort of superhero to solve our problems. This is just more evidence to back up what a lot of people have talked about, for a very long time, not just now. I mean, there are some of the founding fathers, some people that came after the founding fathers and even before them talked about things like this. It's just mainstream history doesn't expose you to that, because then they can't have you thinking that there might be an alternative to government, that there might be, and I'm not saying some sort of structure, but there might be, an alternative that people can take care of things themselves instead of having some bureaucrat putz take care of things for them, or running to some fictional Superman entity to take care of things for them, because that's never going to solve any issues whatsoever. There is no Superman. There is no political Superman that's going to come rescue everybody and save everybody. It's just not the reality of the situation whatsoever. And there's just ample proof of this. There has been. Now, for some people that are still, for those of you that are still on the edge and saying, "Oh, no," I have a 2-minute clip I'm going to play from Ben Swan that'll back up that yes, there is no difference between the shenanigans that the Democrats, the liberals, that a lot of the conservatives hang on to that hatred for. Yes, the same shenanigans that you hate them for, your very own beloved GOP and RNC is doing. So if you're still awake, I want to shake you free, because I want you to realize that that there are other people out there that are not buying into this system anymore and are waking up. You'll see everybody else. Those are the people, the quote-unquote disenfranchised people I was talking about. And I want everyone to realize that we are the answer. We are the answer. But here, just in case you need a little bit of a wake-up call, here, listen, because this is really important. This affects the quote-unquote rules of voting in the future, and how the RNC picks the person they're going to put up their nominee to run. Okay? So this should be more of an example of how this is all rigged and it's a game, and we need to look to ourselves to be the answers. Listen.
There is so much to tell you tonight, it will be difficult to get it all in. But let's start with the rule change. The RNC pushed through a new rule that will forever change the way that Republicans choose their candidates. Rule 16 is for the election, selection, allocation, or binding of delegates and alternate delegates. Any statewide presidential preference vote for the Republican nomination for president in a primary, caucus, or a state convention must be used to allocate and bind the state's delegation to the national convention in either a proportional or winner-take-all manner. In layman's terms, that means there are no more free delegates to vote as they choose. And then part 2, no delegate or alternate delegate who is bound or allocated to a particular presidential candidate may be certified if the presidential candidate to whom the delegate or alternate delegate is bound or allocated has, in consultation with the state party, disavowed the delegate or alternate delegate. Again, what does that mean? It means no delegate, even if elected by Republicans of that state, may serve as a delegate if the candidate and the state party decide they don't like them and they want to replace them. Conservatives, Tea Party members, and Liberty supporters immediately vowed a floor fight over this rule. On Tuesday morning, delegates from Virginia and Rhode Island were on their way to lead that fight when their bus driver refused to stop at the convention center 3 times, circling the building, then leaving the area altogether. And when they returned to the convention center, well, the delegates had already missed their chance to vote on this issue. One of those Virginia delegates, Matthew Hurt, tweeted as this was going on. Take a look. Morton Blackwell was on a bus outside the Rules Committee where he's needed to fight for grassroots conservatives. We have looped around the GOP convention twice and driven away from it. Rules Committee member Morton Blackwell still on the bus. So who is this Morton Blackwell that was trapped on this bus with Virginia delegates? Blackwell is a member of the RNC Rules Committee, and he was the most ardent advocate opposed to the rules change. Now, inside the convention hall, delegates who did make it, they were asked by Speaker of the House John Boehner to vote on adopting this new rule. Now listen as the vote is taken.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Pending on the chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it? How could the Speaker of the House determine clearly how many voted aye and how many voted no? Listen again, but this time to cell phone video from inside the crowd. Well, maybe there's a good reason, a really good reason, that Boehner claimed the ayes had it. Today, incredible cell phone video was released as delegates stood by and videotaped the teleprompter that Speaker Boehner was reading from. We're going to take this video full so you can read along for yourself.
Thank you for putting this question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. So,
The most controversial rule in the Republican Party history, according to countless conservatives, wasn't voted through at all. It was scripted. Despite the shouts of what at least half the room of delegates appeared to have been voting, Boehner just read along with the script. So why is this rule so controversial? Well, consider this. In 1976, Ronald Reagan was a conservative outsider in the Republican Party. But delegates who were conservatives fought back against the presumptive nominee at the time, Gerald Ford, and they forced a brokered convention. Reagan nearly upset Ford thanks to conservative delegates who had had enough with progressive republicanism. Brian Doherty is a Republican National Convention delegate from Pennsylvania. He made this point about this rule change this week. Quote, "Now these rules as they are, if they were in place in 1976, Ronald Reagan would never have risen to power in the Republican Party. When he challenged Ford in '76, he would not have had a say. And then he would not have been in a position to win in 1980. So we would not have a President Reagan if those rules had existed back then." So what you need to know is that the Republican Party didn't need to do any of this to nominate Mitt Romney. Romney had the nomination. He had the numbers at least. But looking ahead, it appears the party was so concerned about not having to put up with Tea Party candidates or Liberty candidates in the future, or apparently with those conservatives like Ronald Reagan in the past, that they were willing to start a civil war for control of the party. Make no mistake, what happened in Tampa will not stay in Tampa. And that is Reality Check.
What they're doing is they're removing any sort of dissent at a grassroots level so that people that aren't really involved, but they go to vote and they think, they buy into the voting every 4 years will change things. They've changed that so that those people will never see the grassroots argument against. They'll never see that argument at all. So now it'll always be this perception of quote-unquote party unity, because the little dictator wannabe, before he's even a quote-unquote dictator at the federal level, is already violating people's rights. Because if you think about it, if you want to think that you have a right to vote or whatever, or he's violating that. If you believe in that system, let me say, this little dictator wannabe is already violating your rights, right? He's violating the fact that you think you have a right to voice your opinion for who you want to vote for, right? Free speech, is that what you call it? I guess the First Amendment? But no, you don't have that right. And if you want to, I guess what they're saying is, well, you have that right, but then you don't have the right to be part of the GOP. So what does that show you? That do you really want to be part of an organization that does that? No. Well, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with an organization that big? What do? Make them irrelevant. Just make them irrelevant. Do we really need them? No. Instead of looking to them and whining that they're not doing it, let's do things ourselves and just make them irrelevant and a thing of the past, something we no longer use. Do we still use telegraphs? No, because phones were invented. And now we have cell phones and Skype and computers and the internet. Right? We evolved, right? Communication evolved. Well, why don't we evolve? I'll leave us on that positive note. Ladies and gentlemen, I love you all. No fear, only love. Educate yourselves. Knowledge is power. I'm out.